Hello, lovely sewing friends. I hope you guys are doing well. I have got quite an interesting video for you guys today because we are actually going to go through my fabric stash. Now, I have been sewing for 20 years, so my fabric stash is quite substantial. I'm just gonna make sure you guys are upright. There we go. So my fabric stash is quite a bit. And I wouldn't call it a stash, I would like to call it a collection. You know, just put a little razzle dazzle on there and show it the respect it deserves, right? So after 20 years of sewing, I have got a lot of fabrics. And so we're going to go through them, and I'm going to tell you all about like how to build up your collection of sewing fabrics and like what to be getting and what to be leaving. So, I started sewing when I was 9 years old, so my taste in fabric was not the best. I had got a lot of low quality fabrics, which is completely fine when you start out sewing. But as you gradually progress and build up your skills and develop more sewing techniques and whatnot, you want to start to get into really good quality fabrics. Now, I tend to normally buy my fabrics either secondhand or through deadstock shops, and that's sustainable and whatnot, but that's kind of how I like to find my fabrics. I don't tend to go to big box stores and like buy bolts and bolts of fabric. I tend to find like little hidden gems, and so having a range of different fabric types in your collection is really, really useful when it comes to making up a sewing project on the fly, because what I love to do is shop my stash before going out and buying new fabric. And when you go fabric shopping, you normally have like a goal or an idea of the type of fabric you want to get. For example, I went fabric shopping yesterday because I looked in my fabric stash and I couldn't find what I was looking for. I was looking for white t-shirting fabric, and I did not have one in my fabric stash. So I went and bought one, and I'll show you it. So I cut this out last night. It's gorgeous. So of course, it's not white, but it's like this matcha, and it kind of matches my nails. But I got this, and the importance of not overbuying when going out buying your fabric, because I measured this at, I think it was 1.5 meters wide, and I needed a meter, but it turned out to be 1.38 wide. So I was like, oh, that's going to be around 1.3 to 1.5 meters worth of fabric. I got 1.5. Turns out I had so much left over. So even after 20 years, I'm still mistakenly buying more excess fabric than I need. So I got that. I think now I'm going to show you guys what I currently have in my fabric stash and kind of where it all started. So I started out with that really cheap fabric, which was fine for learning how to sew. Then moving on to when I went to university, where I was buying more good quality fabrics. Some of the fabrics I still actually have today. Not in that bag, but yes. And we're also going to talk about fabric storage, so let me explain. So I have some of this fabric in here that I had from university that I'm going to show you guys. So this fabric here is a heavyweight silk, or medium weight silk, that I got when I was doing my first ever fashion design degree unit in my second year, I think it was. So I must have bought a couple, like enough, and then I've got like some leftovers, because also what I want to talk to you guys about is always keep your scrap fabrics. Always keep your scrap fabrics, because they come in useful. So that was one of the first pieces of fabric I bought, but also some of the other first pieces of fabric I bought that are still in my stash, because when you are learning about your style, your sewing habits, for example, I know I use a lot of cotton and linen. I always use it. I'll always make a pair of shorts or a dress or a top, very easy to work with. compared to these ones. These are both velvets, right? This is kind of like a short pile. It's gorgeous. And I want to do some smocking with it. I think it would be really gorgeous. But yeah, this is like 1/2 meter by 110. So it's not enough to like do a garment in it. Might do like a camisole top, or, you know, it can be a little bit difficult to work with. That's why it's important to, you know, make sure you understand what goes into your stash, because I've had this piece of fabric for over a decade now and I still have no idea what to do with it. Similarly, this piece of fabric, it is beautiful. It's a velvet. It's a brushed velvet, so it's been burnt out here. And then I've got that gorgeous texture there. I have no idea what I'm going to do with it. Again, it's not very much, but I don't wear velvet, so why do I have velvet in my sewing stash? It's very underused in my wardrobe and in my sewing stash. So these will probably be with me for a lifetime until I figure out what to do with them. On the other hand, I also have quite a few swimsuiting fabrics in my sewing stash. I've got this one, and I've also got this one there. And then I've got a couple further down there. I have made something with this swimsuiting material, but it didn't fit me very well because I didn't do a toile, and that was my error, so that one's on me. But I also have this one as well, and I know I bought them because I love them, and I still love them. And one day, this is the thing about a fabric stash, these are going to be made up into children's swimsuits for my future children, if I choose to have children and whatnot, family, whatever. But these are kind of like going to be in my sewing stash for a long time, and that's fine. But I don't have any real need for them immediately. And that's okay, because sometimes you see a fabric and you absolutely love it, and you're just like, absolutely, yes, I'm making something out of that. I don't know what it's going to be. Well, in this case, it's going to be swimsuits, but I have no plans to currently make it. That's fine. With certain fabrics, like a Liberty, I have no holds bar on, because I save money all the time. Fabric is one thing I allow myself to spend on because I know I will use it eventually. So I tend to buy what I want with my fabric, but I have become a lot more in tune with what I get into my stash. So for example, I'll go out and I'll see a beautiful fabric and be like, oh, that's gorgeous. But then I'll think, do I have something similar in my stash that I can already use? Am I going to sew with this within the next year or two? I actually haven't bought a lot of fabric over the last couple of years since moving to Melbourne, because I realized how much fabric I actually currently have. I have the most beautiful raincoating in this color here. Yeah, I found it. So that's the raincoating there. It is beyond gorgeous. I clearly still love the color. And then I got this like faux Burberry lining fabric. They're both waterproof, and I will one day make a raincoat out of it. I've got the pattern, and also I drafted my own pattern for it, so I had to make sure I got enough fabric. But those two together are going to make the most beautiful raincoat one day. One day they will be made into a raincoat. But for now, they're just going to stay in my stash. So storing your fabric stash. I talked to another sewist over the last couple of weeks, and she said that if she cannot see her fabric, it does not exist. So whereas for me, I cannot see my fabric because otherwise I get too distracted and too overwhelmed. So I would say, do what works best for you, and do what works best for you in your environment. For example, I have massive storage closets. I can chuck everything up there, no problem. I do like to keep everything in these like airtight bags because moths and everything. And also you can vacuum seal them, so it's really good for if you're moving or storage or anything like that. So that's what I prefer. But yeah, I guess using the space that you currently have to store your fabric is the best use of your storage space and how you prefer to store your stuff. I also use these really big bins down here, just like from Kmart or storage area things and whatnot. And I like to store my fabric in there that I'm going to use within the next year or so, or fabric that I know I want to make something out of. And as soon as I have the mental clarity, I'll go back to and I'll make something up in it. Like, for example, this fabric, I'm wearing my skirt again. I made this skirt because I had the fabric there and I was seeing it somewhat regularly and I knew where it was. So that helped me keep on top of all my fabric. An alternative to that is, I really should have found this book before I started filming, but let's go down here underneath my fabric cutting table. So I tend to, in best of intentions, like to keep a little scrapbook of like all my fabric stash and all my ideas. No, I have no idea where it is. But yeah, I try to. I actually have found it. Oh my god, I'm so clever. I'm so clever, aren't I just? If you struggle to keep on top of your fabric and your ideas and all that kind of stuff, get yourself one of these or a book of some sort, because what I like to do, and I've been doing this for a while, need to get back into it, is I like to, let me find a better page with all my examples on. I like to sketch out my ideas and then put a fabric swatch next to it, because that way you kind of, here we go, perfect example. So here are all my sketches with the intended fabric swatch right next to it. See, this one here is like a windbreaker jacket, and I've made that and I've been wearing it to the gym, like to and from the gym, for about 6 years now. And it's amazing because I just throw it on and it's just easy. And if I didn't have that fabric swatch there to inspire me to make that, I probably may have never made it. But having everything there to just inspire me and just go and find it from my stash, because this is also shopping your stash. You can sketch out a bunch of ideas and have a bunch of swatches next to you and kind of like play around with it. So that really helps me. What else? Speaking of scraps, always keep your scrap fabric, because I love little, oh my god, this is the raincoat. This is the raincoat, right? It's like got a hood and then like a little like vest part so that the rain runs down there and off. And then it's got like buttons down the front. Then there'll be like a concealed zip, and then a hood in 3 parts. It's going to be gorgeous one day. And I'll show you something else, right? So I sketched out this dress a couple of years ago, right? And then here it is. It's the exact same thing. I love that. I absolutely love that. So yeah, I found this super useful. I got it from a friend called Heather, who I worked with at the fabric store. So yeah, see, and then just a little patchwork for a pair of pants there. They never came to anything, but we can always live and always dream of sewing projects undone. But yeah, like that's how I tend to organize / not organize my stash, because anytime I try to make it like, this is where the polyesters are, and here's where the wools are, and here's where the cottons are, and here's where the linens are, it never works. Because I just go rummaging through like a little raccoon, because I want to find that particular fabric and I want to get that project underway while the sewing motivation is still there. And speaking of scraps, I'm making more whales out of all my scraps. There is nothing more satisfying than getting your scrap fabric and making something out of them. And then with the fabric scraps, I put them all in here, all in this little bag, like these little bits that I can't make into anything else, and I use them as stuffing for the whales. So there is so much you can do with your fabric stash, but I think the most important thing is to know what is currently in your stash, because there is nothing worse than, and I've done this, thinking you need to go out and buy something like a rib knit for a collar on a sweatshirt or something like that, a grey one in my particular case. I went out and bought like 1/2 meter of grey rib, came home, and then discovered that I had already bought it. So I'd bought the same thing twice. I'd bought the same thing like a year earlier for something, but I didn't look in my stash to see if I had it. And it's just like, oh my gosh, like, first of all, I wasted money on it. Second of all, I've now got 2 things of the exact same thing that I don't need. And 3, I've just wasted my energy and resources getting that to do this thing. And it's just like, oh, this is so annoying. So know what's in your stash through collecting swatches or sketching out designs, or even what I like to do. I've got this little mood board here, and I just have like fabric swatches all over here. And I just like having fabric swatches around, so I just get inspired to sew. So organize your fabric stash and your fabric swatches, whatever way works best for you. And also organize your fabric in the best way that works for you. Like vacuum pack seal bags in my closet works amazing for me, may not work best for you, so just try different methods. And then also, what else? Use your stash. Actually use it up. I love making something out of something that I already have. For example, this skirt, this fabric was in my stash for two years before I used it up. And I love it because when I went and bought this fabric, I was like, yes, exactly. I love that fabric. That's my style. That's my taste. That's what I love. It was a linen and cotton blend. I know I'm going to work with it. Done. Whereas, excuse me. Whereas something like this velvet is gorgeous. It's lovely. But do I wear velvet? No. Have I ever sewn with velvet? No. Am I going to sew with velvet soon? Probably not. So what's the point of having this particular, like, if I could go back now and not buy this, I wouldn't. I wouldn't buy it, is what I'm saying. And so, but that only comes with time. And I think the word of advice, do not go out and buy a fabric stash. Collect a fabric stash. You do not need to get everything all at the same time. You just need to accumulate little pieces in chunks over time with love, with care, and then you create a stash of sustainable sewing fabrics that you can then use, right? Because I was about to say I've not bought fabric for ages, but I bought fabric the other day. But this is where sewing can be such an amazing thing to do, because we are sewing our own wardrobes, and therefore we can decide what we're wearing and what we're using and what we're repurposing. You guys, I cannot tell you how many times I wore that top that I made out of the dress, and I kept all the scraps because I'm going to make the pants into shorts. I'm going to do something with it. And then those scraps are going to feed into the next project. It all comes back around. And that is how I organize my stash, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, so all good things happening over here. I'm working on a new sewing pattern, like a little basic t-shirt that I think is going to be so useful, because who doesn't wear t-shirts? And there's going to be a little twist with it, so I'll save that one for the next one. Hopefully I'll be wearing it by then, but I hold myself to no time standards when it comes to creativity, and neither should you. So live, laugh, love, and learn to sew. Bye!